very good day to you this day of your time. How are you all? All right. We will once again extend to each and every one of you our deep appreciation in allowing this particular transmission and communication to take place in this way, which affords us the opportunity to expand our own consciousness as well as sharing with you some ideas that can help to expand your own. Let us begin. We understand that we are having this discussion, this get-together, as you say in your language, this day of your time, for the purpose of talking about the subject of money. Now, yours is not the only planet that has it, but it is one of the few we have encountered that does. But that's all right. It is unique, it is valid, and since we understand it is one of the ways your planet works, we will talk about it in direct terms. Now, the idea to understand, first and foremost, is this. Do not mean to disappoint you, but I will not be telling you how to win the lottery. That is first and foremost. I will tell you this. You have the ability to win the lottery, but you must understand that it has to be keyed to the strongest excitement within you and has to be an all-consuming focus or an absolute knowingness for you to allow yourself to fall into the appropriate slot where that can synchronistically represent itself to you as one form of abundance on your planet. It can be done, but that's not what we're here to discuss. We're here to discuss the idea of how you can attract more money into your life by whatever methodology you so desire. Now, yes, as a very brief recap, yes, it is for the most part based on the idea of following your joy. Absolutely, because that is fundamentally who you are. Your excitement, your vibration is who you are. By acting on your joy, it is far more likely that you're going to put yourself in the proper place and time to see the opportunities that can allow you to act upon them to bring you more money in your life. Please do remember, and we will get into this in another way, in a new way in a moment, but please do remember that abundance really is only the ability to do what you need to do when you need to do it. It can be money. It doesn't have to be money, but it can be money, and because that is the subject of this discussion, we will focus on that. Now, what we are really saying here, in terms of giving you more of an opportunity to attract more money in your life, is we are helping in this discussion to uncover and to clarify your relationship to money and abundance. Your relationship to money and abundance. Because that is all it takes. That's all that's required to allow money to come pouring in rivers, in waterfalls into your life. Because the universe is abundant. Your planet has all the money it needs for every single one of the individuals that we are talking to now in this gathering, and many, 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 many more to become what you call millionaires. More than enough for that. Remember, one of the reasons that is so is that not everyone needs or wants to really be a millionaire. So the idea is that for everyone that is truly excited and attracted to that experience, there is enough for you to become a multi-millionaire. There is. After all, you create the idea of money. You can create what you need. Not saying that you should run out and print it. We understand your laws frown on that. But you can create what you need. You can attract what you need in your life regarding as much money as you have ever dreamed of. One of the things that we have said that does go hand in hand with this, of course, is the degree of your activity, the degree to which you put out that you exist on a level that is commensurate with receiving a lot of money in return. For individuals who are simply limiting themselves in certain ways are actually giving off a message that they don't really want or need that much money. But by expanding your expression of self, you give off more of a signal to reality, to the mirror of the universe, that money can be reflected in the degree of expansion you are willing to provide, you are willing to exhibit. Now, let us talk about three primary ideas. This will be new approaches for you regarding the concept of money. And remember, what we are doing is we are attempting to shake up, dislodge, deconstruct then clarify and reconstruct and relodge your relationship to money. Because you don't have to do anything but relate to money differently than you do in order for money to come flooding into your life. But the fact that many of you don't have a clear relationship to money is the thing that prevents that money from coming in. So, let us begin with the first of the three ideas. Now, to some degree, I've talked about this concept before, and the concept that we will now present to you in a new way is the concept of definitions, and specifically definitions that contradict one another. Remember, your beliefs, your definitions, are what create your reality. Now, one of the things we have said is the idea that you are raised with a number of conflicting ideas about money. One of the ones we have given you already is that when you are growing up, most people, especially in your culture, will say, in order to be successful, in order to be looked at as successful, in order to be considered successful, you must make a lot of money. And again, in the next breath, in the other ear, they say, but money is the root of all evil. That means if you become successful, you are going to be evil. You really do take these concepts to heart. You really do. And when you do, you create this conflict within yourself, this battle, this war within yourselves that doesn't allow you to move ahead. And it sours your relationship to money. And it builds tension and stress within your body because you are literally tearing yourself apart. I want to be successful. I want a lot of money. I will be the devil himself if I become rich. What am I to do? What am I to do? As we have discussed, the idea is to get in touch, of course, with those definitions and clarify them so that you understand that these are not things you must believe in. That you don't have to connect the idea of being a bad person, of being evil, so to speak, with the idea of having money. You don't have to believe that absolute power corrupts absolutely, because it only does when you absolutely believe that it does. That's the point. You need to find your definitions and weed them out, lay them out clearly, separate them out clearly, disentangle them from one another clearly, so that you can understand what you are dealing with, what you have to work with. What are the tools you have at hand? What are the definitions that give you your relationship to money? An example that was recently provided is the idea that because you have entangled your belief systems up, you can be thinking that you want one thing, and you don't seem to be able to get that one thing, and you can't figure out why you can't get that one thing, until all of a sudden you realize that if you got that one thing, it would mean that you would have to do this other thing that to you is something you don't want to do. And so because it is something you are absolutely 100% against doing in your mind, you will make sure that you prevent yourself from getting that first thing that would give you or force you to do the other thing. When you connect things together that way, then you will never be able to allow yourself to see clearly what your relationships are, because it will all be caught up and wound up in a bunch of different cross-conflicting belief systems. Let's now look at one we have not discussed before that on the surface may not seem to be very profound, but again, remember, all these things sink into you, and when they do, even though the original idea may on the surface not seem to have a lot of power, when you apply the same principles unconsciously to other areas of your life, they can absolutely stop you cold, stop you dead, as you say. Let's look at your idea of your monetary system. Now, when your money, your idea of money, your value for money, the value you have placed on your money, when the value of your money becomes less, you say your money is inflated. What kind of sense does that make? You say that something that gets bigger gets smaller. That something that gets smaller gets bigger. And when it all of a sudden has more value, you say it has deflated. Is it any wonder you are confused? No, not at all. Again, this may seem arbitrary, but stop and think about it. These are the kinds of signals that you have been giving yourselves and have been given to you for years concerning money. There is a very important thing to understand behind this. And that is, you need to look at money in exactly the opposite way you have been trained to look at money. In especially this case, the idea, first of all, of whatever this core value is that you have arbitrarily assigned to the idea of money, that you all agree is the worth of the money. But then once you have done that, you go throwing your own system out of whack, out of kilter, by labeling this value as fluctuating in such a manner that the label is exactly the opposite of what it is doing. Allow yourself to begin right now to reverse that idea. Let's use this example. And I will take you through the exercise now briefly, but understand why we are doing this. Everything we are now going to discuss, in all the examples we will now give you, may on the surface just sound like words, and you may walk out of this seminar, as you call it, afterwards saying, well, all right, I heard a lot of words, and maybe they made sense, and maybe they did not. But what is actually going on here is this. The things that we are sharing with all of you now on this subject are specifically designed to get under your skin, into your sub and unconscious selves, and dislodge, to start to break up these locked-in, deep-seated definitions and belief systems about money that you've been carrying with you through your whole life. So when you walk away, you may think, well, that was nice, those were words. You will actually walk away beginning the process of breaking down all of these ideas. It is like we are now giving you, tossing into your brain, a little time-released acid capsule, meaning the acid that dissolves, not the drug. The idea being that that capsule will begin to break down, and as it does, it will begin to seek out and dissolve all of those conflicting, contrary ideas and beliefs, and will start to unravel the tapestry, so you will begin to examine them one at a time. All of a sudden you'll find yourself beginning in your dreams or in your waking state to start seeing one at a time those individual precision definitions that have been wrapped up with other ones. You'll start to break down your ideas of your relationship to money. That's what it is that we are doing here. We're rattling your cage, rattling your consciousness, and allowing you to deconstruct who you have been so that you can go through the process of reconstructing who you are and thus reconstruct the relationship to money that you have had into something new, into something abundant, into something spendable, tradable, on the open market, on your planet. And that will be you. You are the commodity that needs to be traded, that needs to be spent, that needs to be exchanged. You are the thing of value. You. Before we go on with this exercise, I will tell you that in time, not right away, but in time, your planet's quote-unquote monetary system will actually finally be based, and this is what it is heading toward, be based on the skills and abilities people have to offer. And there will be, not a government, but an organizational body that will put people together based on the skills they have to share with the people that need those skills. And synchronistically, everyone will find exactly who they need to provide what they need, and in turn will provide to others what they need based on who they are. But until that day, I understand that you want big fat wallets. And so let us proceed. because that is what this subject is about. So, with regard to this idea of inflation, deflation, let us look at the idea now in your minds. You can close your eyes, you can open your eyes, it doesn't matter. But if you will, see the idea of what you call one of your dollar bills, and see it getting bigger, inflating, 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 in the literal sense of the word, so that it is bigger, 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 and along with it, and congruently, it is more powerful. You have more spending power in that dollar because you're making it bigger. Bigger, 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 bigger. Now, stop it there at a certain size, whatever that size may be. Or if it's stopped by itself, that's fine. Now, let it shrink. Don't worry, it's all right. You can always inflate it again. There's more than enough air. Let it shrink. Down, 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 down. Tiny, tiny, tiny little itty-bitty piece of paper. So small, maybe it would just blow away in the wind like a speck. Little tiny dollar. No value, or almost no value at all. Can't even grab it, let alone spend it. Can't convince anyone it's a dollar because it's so small you can't see it. Now, let it come back to what you consider it to be normal size. Now, look at it carefully. Don't adjust it. Did it come back slightly smaller than normal size and stop, or slightly bigger than normal size and then stop, or did it come back exactly the size you have always seen it? There are ways to tell. Allow yourself in your own mind to understand by taking a good look at it, by having in your imagination someone else walk in and put a dollar bill down next to it as to whether it wound up a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. This will tell you the beginnings of what value you consider money in general to have. Whether it is really worth more or worth less than what you call the going rate. And this keys strongly into your relationship to money and your relationship to yourself as to whether you believe you are more or less than the going rate. Whether you have the ability to be a commodity worth exchanging, or whether you fall a little short. Now understand, please, this is important. Nothing that we are saying here today is about becoming a materialistic, egocentric, money-grubbing person. We are not talking about the idea of forming a fixation on material goods, but it is all right for you to attract material comfort in your life. There is a balance. You all know that. I don't really have to say it, but it's too late. I already did. So relax and let go of any worries any of you might have had about the idea that, oh, we're focusing so strongly today on the idea of getting a lot of money, but I don't want to be seen as a money-grubbing miser. I don't want to be seen as someone who hoards their money. You really are, I will assume, simply looking for that primary balance point that allows you to feel the freedom you know you deserve to feel. Yes? 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 All right. Just want to make sure you're awake. Now, let us go on to item number 2. And here is a very, very powerful, powerful, powerful equation. Very powerful. You don't have to believe me. No matter how many times I say it, when you learn to use this tool, you will see it's very powerful. Why? Because it is the essential structure of how you attract money. And as all essential structures, it is built on paradox. Most of you are brought up with different ideas that, taken all together, allow you to create in your mind and in your heart a particular cumulative, reactive, emotional effect. This particular cumulative, reactive, emotional effect is generally as follows. If I don't have enough, or what I think ought to be enough money, then there's nothing I can do. I am sunk. I am stuck. I have nothing to work with. This is the general reaction most of you have to what you typically call a low level of income, or an almost non-existent level of income. You feel stuck. You feel incapable of really moving ahead. What I am going to tell you now is that this is the most powerful state you can be in to generate money. Not just for what you might typically think, oh, because I'm at the bottom of the barrel now, all I have to do is move up because up is the only way I can move. Yes, that's true, but that's not the point and not the mechanism. Here's the idea. Pay attention very, very carefully. It is simple, but it might take you a moment to understand how to use it and how to apply it. But when you do, or are you going to take off like a rocket? Oh, all right, you're going to take off like a hyperdrive spaceship. Now, creation is nothing but abundance. In, let's just put it colloquially, creation's infinite wisdom, you were created with exactly what you need to create more of whatever you need. Let's go over that one more time. When you find yourself standing in a room, outside, wherever it may be, and you feel, let's just say, oh, destitute, if that is how you feel, let's just take that example, nothing like extreme, to get your attention. You must understand the first part of this principle, very important in this paradox, in this power, is you still have at that moment every single thing you need. Every single thing you need. I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to give you an example that is a metaphor in a sense, but realistic. Let us say you fancy yourself an artist. Now you're standing there. You have nothing. You think. What does it take to begin? What does it take to begin to be an artist? To draw something? Well, you say, well, I can't pay for the fancy paints. I can't pay for the fancy pens. I can just barely afford a pencil. Well, I know this is going to sound strange, but you know, people on your planet, when they didn't have fancy paints, when they didn't have fancy pens, when they didn't have pencils, used sticks. And they burnt the sticks to create charcoal, and they drew on cave walls. Some of the most beautiful art, you still think so today. Those cave paintings are extremely sophisticated, very beautiful, and compare with almost anything in any of your museums. And you know this. The point is they knew they had what they needed at hand. This is something you have forgotten because you have been surrounded with the idea that in order to be who you are, the only way you can do that is to have the fancy things. This is a notion I would urge you to get over now. Right now. It doesn't serve you. You don't need the fancy things.
All right.
First question is from an individual who is saying their wife passed away last Friday, and the person feels overwhelmed. They have 2 children, and they feel guilty and responsible for their lives to move on, as well as since they no longer have a mother figure. And the person's been crying all week, and they're trying to be strong for their children. Do you have any advice for this person? Is there something that their wife or their spirit guide wants them to know? And is this part of their process of going through the eye of the needle? How do they proceed from here?
All right, well, we are not going to necessarily interrupt their grieving period. They must let go of their fear-based beliefs about the situation in whatever timing they feel they can manage. But at the same time, know that this was all done in terms of an arrangement of timing, and that the loved one in spirit can still aid and assist and send messages and love to those still physical. But the idea is guilt does not serve the children that you are responsible for. It will actually prevent you from giving them what they need. There is no reason for you to be guilty. The idea is that this would not necessarily have come to pass if you couldn't handle it, if this wasn't by an arrangement and an agreement. We would suggest you reach out to your wife, knowing that the sooner you can relax the feelings of grief, use an opportunity for you to align with Spirit more strongly, to receive more messages from her, to receive guidance from her and your spirit guides in terms of what you and the children may require for your continuation on earth. And know that she is always with you, unconditionally loving, sending energy, sending help. More likely you will receive these in dream time. But look around with open eyes at the synchronicities in your life, knowing that many of them may be coming from her as messages to you. Relax your heart and open your heart to receive these messages in the best way you possibly can by looking around and being alert and paying attention to the synchronicities that will crop up in your life, allowing you to move forward in an easier way. We would suggest that you take some time for yourself to visit places that were of interest to both of you when she was alive, knowing that in those places that you love to be together in, there may be more receptivity on your part. And even though you may be crying, know that this is a release and a letting go and an accepting, eventually, of the situation at hand that you have both agreed to for the purpose of stretching you and your children towards spirit, knowing that one of the parents is now in spirit, can help you all progress and ascend and accelerate your learning and your lives and enrich your lives in a number of ways. Explore the idea with your children of communication with spirit, for it is as real as any form of communication, and perhaps in some cases even more real, as you understand that term. But work together with the children to open up in beautiful places to the idea that you can receive messages through synchronicity and in dreams, and maybe in other ways as well. And remember her favorite things. For when you do remember her favorite things, again, you may relax and open your heart to receive more information from her. These would be the things for now that we would suggest to help you through this particular period until such time as you yourself become more accustomed to realizing that as long as you consider this to be a loss, as long as you define it as a loss, then you will only continue to grieve each and every time that your wife may actually reach out to connect to you. You will only interpret her energy as a loss and feel more grief. But if you understand that sometimes what you may feel as grief is simply your interpretation that she is gone instead of your interpretation that she is there with you and helping you. Allow yourself to relax that definition so you can receive the help she is giving, the help she is sending, the information she is sharing with you. That will lead you forward. This is what we have to say at the moment.
What is the difference between guilt and responsibility when it comes to dealing with family members? I've tried to maintain the relationships, but they are no longer exciting. Continuing with these relationships feels heavy and burdening, yet I feel guilt for keeping my distance. I, of course, love them, yet prefer to focus on my own self-discovery. Can you help me in this scenario?
Now, there are two ways to address this. Number one, if you feel it is absolutely true for you to not interact physiologically with these people because you are vibrationally so incompatible that it simply makes no sense to do so, that is a choice you can make. And again, by doing so, it can be the most loving thing you can do by showing them the consequences of not choosing to match your frequency and maintaining the connection on their part. At the same time, if you truly are in touch with yourself and the vibrational state you know is true for you, then in some senses it wouldn't necessarily matter if you maintain a connection physically with them, because it won't affect you. You will not feel guilty, you will just be yourself, and you will know that you're acting as a living example to demonstrate to them different choices they could make. Whether they choose to do so or not is not the point. The point is that you may give them a choice, you may give them an opportunity to choose something different by maintaining a physical connection and not being affected by anything that is vibrationally incompatible with what you prefer to be. But again, it is up to you to decide when you have reached a limit, when you have realized that they may simply not choose to change and may in fact actually push you away by resenting the idea of what you are showing them. And that might be your signal that physical connection may need to cease. So you need to simply prepare yourself to make a choice by first and foremost getting a stronger connection in yourself about what is true for you. Feeling guilty about this will only connect you more to the vibration you say is incompatible and that you don't prefer. So that makes no sense for you to feel the sense of guilt, because all you're doing is accepting the idea that they resent that you are changing. They resent that you are different, perhaps because it acts as an example to them of things they were not willing to face within themselves. You can act as a living example if you maintain your vibration of preference, but again, you don't have to, because even if you don't, it still serves as an indication to them of what choices they have made and the consequences of those choices relative to maintaining a physical relationship with you. So if they wish to do so, they would have to change. Not that they will, but they would have to do so.
How does that apply in a situation where a person has had an abusive childhood and now their aging parents are requiring their support and their attention, and the person feels guilty because they're not willing to be physically present with their parents under the circumstances because of the past?
Again, it's the same that we just said. If you maintain a strong sense of your vibration and at the same time realize that you can be of some assistance to someone, if it is truly true that they need that assistance, you must make that determination for yourself as opposed to things they can do for themselves or not. So if you have determined that you have made a familial connection by being born to these people, and that there is something you could truly help them with to aid and assist them in whatever they're going through, whatever process they're going through, and yet at the same time maintain the strength of your connection to who you truly are, then you will not be negatively affected by whatever behaviors they may choose to exhibit, knowing that you are being of great assistance to them if they truly need it, and that is the most important thing, is to demonstrate to them the unconditional love that you know can be expressed by you to truly aid and assist them if they truly require it, and at the same time not be negatively affected by whatever their reactions or responses or behaviors may be in that circumstance and situation. And it gives you an opportunity to practice letting go of the idea of the past, since again, if you realize many of the things we have been sharing with all of you, there in a sense is no such thing. You are recreating the idea of abuse in every moment in the present out of your own need to do so. So discontinue your need to hang on to the idea of the abuse because of your belief systems that you may require it for some reason, that it serves you in some way. And when you let that go, you will be able to stand in the face of great opposition, and you will be able to face those fires with coolness and calm them down within yourself, regardless of what the other people may choose to do.
We've noticed that often when parents get elderly, they get early signs of dementia or behaviors that could be suggestive of dementia. And that part of that can be being abusive and impossible to deal with, in a sense, irrational in their behavior. Is that, again, this idea of stepping outside of the issues of abuse from the past and simply recognizing that the person is not themselves, in a sense?
Yes.
When they're elderly.
Yes, and if they are experiencing the symptoms you have described, they are usually making their transition, whether quickly or slowly, into spirit, but they may be momentarily confused about what is real, because they are bordering two realities, the physical and the non-physical. And therefore, you can recognize and excuse their behavior as one of confusion. And again, if you stay strong within yourself and know what your truth is, it will not affect you any more than a stranger making an irrational statement would, because they have become strangers to you and you to them in many ways.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Can you talk to us about the inherent guilt surrounding religion? This person says, I was brought up in a Jewish tradition, and it's been a long road in terms of shedding guilt. Guilt if you're happy, guilt if you're healthy, guilt if you're wealthy, guilt if the other shoe is going to drop. I would love for you to talk about untangling this kind of guilt.
All right. Well, first and foremost, it's not inherent. It's taught. That's a major distinction to make. And therefore, it can be untaught. It's simply about recognizing whether or not the guilt serves you. As we have talked about the motivational mechanism, please do remember, you absolutely do nothing that you don't believe serves you in some way. So this is about really doing an honest, deep investigation of what it is you believe you're getting out of having the guilt. What does it allow you to experience or not experience that makes you feel safer in having it than in letting it go? This requires a very deep and honest investigation of self in order to admit that if you're holding on to guilt and keep repeating it, no matter how much you were taught it, if you're now able to discern the difference between guilt and freedom, guilt and love, then you have the ability to dive into your motivational mechanism and ask yourself why you would be motivated to continue to perpetuate something if it doesn't really serve you. Because the only way you would keep feeling it is if you believe it does. So it requires a lot of transparent self-investigation to ask the question, what am I getting out of continuing to hold on to guilt? There must be something about holding on to it that makes me feel safer than the alternative. And if you're willing to investigate and go down that path, you will eventually be able to pick it apart and figure out why you're holding on to the guilt, because you think there is some advantage to doing so. Otherwise, you would not feel it at all.
How can we be at peace with the idea that we may have hurt, wronged, or made mistakes with others along the way on our learning journey? How can we release those feelings of guilt and regret about the impact we've had on other lives that may have been negative so that we can move forward in a more aligned way?
Well, the idea is self-forgiveness and the recognition that if you know you made a mistake, so to speak, and are willing to correct it in your own energy and not make the same mistake again and not be abusive to other people in that way because you recognize it is out of alignment with who you prefer to be, then you have corrected the energy and there's no reason for guilt. Guilt perpetuates the idea of the misalignment. So why would you hold on to the idea of misalignment if you recognize that you were misaligned and don't prefer to be misaligned anymore in your behaviors and actions? Why hold on to any remnant of the misalignment which you would experience as guilt if you truly wish to move forward? If you recognize you were misaligned and have a desire to realign yourself and correct the mistake in some way, shape, or form, then there is no vestige of guilt that would remain if you've actually done that. So you can't really move forward until you accept that you made a mistake and now you wish to correct the mistake and the energy within yourself and bring yourself back into alignment.
And along those lines, are there any experiences that are more or less spiritual than others? Is it possible to do a good, bad, better, or worse job with our lifetime? And is there really a mistake? Can we really get this wrong? A lot of these ideas perhaps bring about a lot of self-judgment, so that's why this person is asking the question.
Ultimately, no. You are not judged by all that is or anything except yourself. Ultimately. But there is still the ability to recognize what it is you prefer, what it is you don't, what it is that is vibrationally representative and compatible with who you prefer to be, and when you are in alignment or out of alignment with that. That is the only thing that could be considered a mistake, even though it's not meant in the traditional sense. In other words, a mistake is simply a recognition, an alignment energy that allows you to recognize that you may have been out of alignment with who you really, truly, at your core, are and prefer to be. Oneness and alignment and harmony with all that is. So a mistake, ultimately, no, is something that can be used as a learning experience, a teaching experience, to reflect back to you that you may not necessarily be operating in the state of being you prefer to. And in that sense, if you learn the lesson from that and recognize the truth of that and bring yourself back into alignment, then you have used the so-called mistake in a way that makes it not a mistake, because you've used it in a way that brings you back into harmony, into alignment. So ultimately, no. But in the moment, you can simply recognize and use your words, whatever words you wish to use to identify the misalignment, to bring yourself back into alignment.
Okay, and
where do you see, where does your hopes and where do you think humanity will be in the year 2100, out of curiosity? And has Bashar ever spoken about what the potential of that time period would be for us?
Well, yes, it's the beginning of what he's saying. The evolutionary path for humanity is what he calls evolving into the sixth hybrid race, which is going to expand into the galaxy in a certain way. And we're going to become other civilizations, UFOs, eventually. We're going
Right.
to be that are going to help other civilizations up the ladder in the same way that these civilizations that we're dealing with are helping us up the ladder. So it's really about becoming members of a galactic society, a galactic family. And it's really about letting ourselves change in ways that give us more abilities. The hybrid beings are going to be coming to live among us. The hybrid children are going to be coming to live among us. There will eventually be blending. And we will be coming, well, as Bashar kind of puts it, we'll actually finally becoming fully human, because we're not fully human yet. So he sees that as the true evolutionary result of us opening up to accept more of who and what we are, connecting to our spiritual selves, bringing more of our souls through the physical experience of our lives, through our physical avatars, and really being star beings, really, really owning what and who we are. And that's going to really just change everything on the earth that we decide to go to, if that's the direction we decide to go. Again, there will be those that don't. But for those that do, I think it will be expanding beyond what we can imagine right now, because there are so many things we're just unaware of that are going on out in the cosmos that we can become a part of. You know, we'll have unlimited resources. There will be no lack of anything. You know, the whole science fiction scenario of, you know, aliens coming to Earth to get our minerals and our resources and stuff like that. There are so many things out there. It's so abundant out there. They have no lack of anything, and no lack of an ability to get the resources that they need. They certainly don't need this planet to get that. What they need this planet for, and how Earth is so important to them, is what's going on the planet. The idea of how we're facing our challenges, how we're transforming things, the different stories that are being played out here, the effect that the conclusion of those stories have on the cosmos. It's our agreement to be the souls that experience these things and finish these stories that is really the important step to all of these alien civilizations. It's our discovery of our self-empowerment through these incredibly limiting challenges. This is why Bashar has for a long time called us the masters of limitation, because for a while we have been the masters of creating limitation. But when he then says, but what you're doing is learning to become the masters of limitation, where you can overcome those limitations, transform those limitations. And this is a challenging school. But the fact that we can overcome the limitations we put on ourselves is something that other civilizations are also learning from. Because if we can overcome these limitations, these incredible dark limitations, negative limitations, fear-based limitations, as deeply as we've created them and still overcome them, well, civilizations that may not be as steeped in those limitations can look at us and go, well, gosh, if they can do it, we can do it, because we're not as limited as they are, and yet they can still overcome those limitations. So we're a good lesson for a lot of civilizations that are looking to us to be the ones that show this is how you do it. This is how you lose yourself and find yourself again.
Great, thank you. And this person's question is about Christ consciousness.
Yeah.
How would you define Christ consciousness? What does Christ consciousness reflect to us?
Christ consciousness is typically a reflection of the entire collective consciousness of your world. In other words, you have your own individual consciousness, you have group consciousnesses, you have archetypal consciousnesses. Christ consciousness is the archetype of the collective of the entire population of the earth and the earth itself.
So what frequency would Christ consciousness represent?
Well, this is something that brackets both the physical and non-physical realities. So it is something that contains frequencies that, in a sense, are a spectrum just below 333,000 cycles per second and above 333,000 cycles per second, which is the barrier between physical and non-physical reality. So it actually straddles both.
Okay, that's nice. And I think this will probably be the last question. Recently, you described how embracing being spirit beings is an important part of preparation for the idea of open contact with high vibrational quasi-physical ETs. Can you give some examples of the aspects of and abilities associated with being a spirit which are important to learn and integrate as we raise our vibration?
The most important thing is to completely let go of the fear of death. To understand it, truly understand it, as nothing more than a continuation of life, a transition into a different state. In many ways, just a continuation of your experience of physical reality, because physical reality is simply another aspect of the spirit realm in which you exist and never leave. So when you really start to experience the idea of non-physical reality as a continuum and a continuation of physical reality, and start to experience physical reality as a projection of non-physical reality, that you never leave non-physical reality in order to have a physical experience, when you dissolve the idea of the difference and the borderline to a great degree between physical and non-physical reality and lose your fear of death, then you will experience yourself more as the higher mind, experience more abilities of spirit in physical terms. You will be a more balanced and blended being and experience more of what we talked about earlier in terms of the way we experience our reality.
I see. And thank you so much for your help with all of these questions. I know that in the future I will be prepared for that pop quiz when it comes my way. I'm sure a lot of people enjoyed that. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. We really appreciate it.
It is our passion and our pleasure. There will be more tests coming up.
I bet. Okay, and I've heard you speak about how physical reality is a mirror and how we sometimes hold on to beliefs that are not ours. Can you go into more detail about this? If physical reality is a mirror, how did beliefs not reflective of my core frequency come from others in my society? I'm trying to reconcile you get what you give, or what you put out is what you get back.
We have just explained this. The idea is that reflections, even though you're using that word, are not one-to-one reflections as in a literal mirror. The idea is to understand that you can attract someone into your life who may be completely vibrationally incompatible with what you prefer because you are willing to assist them. The reflection is they're giving you an opportunity to reflect your willingness to be of assistance in providing them other options other than the paths and the choices that they may be taking or making. So don't confuse the idea of the word reflection for the concept that someone coming into your life who doesn't operate or make choices the same way you do is actually representative of what you're doing. That's not often the case. They may simply be representative of your willingness to be of assistance to them to help them take another path. So reflection doesn't mean absolute one-to-one reflection.
So in a sense, would you say that when anything comes into our life, or a person comes into our life, and we get a certain reflection, the important thing is first to check in with your own belief systems about whether or not, if you're getting a negative reflection, whether or not the information being shared with you about you is really true.
Yes.
Or if it's a projection of the other person's consciousness.
Yes.
And by doing this, it strengthens your understanding of who you are. And without those kinds of other reflections that I'm describing, you would not be as clear or pushed as far to express your truth.
Yes, the willingness to, at first, number one, see if what is being offered to you is something that can aid you, assist you, be applied to you, to improve you, to better you. And number two, if not, then the realization that it might be the other person's issue and they have come to you because they sense that you could possibly reflect to them what they need to change themselves, even though they may or may not choose that, is what gives you better discernment about what is yours and what is not yours. So the willingness to at first think about whether what they're offering you is yours or not helps you with the discernment to be able in the future to tell the difference between what is truly yours and what is an issue being projected by another person that has really nothing to do with you other than perhaps their ability to sense that you could be of assistance by listening to them and helping them make other choices other than the ones that they are choosing.
And in addition to that idea of when someone is offered something that's diminishing
Yes.
of their value or their worth, and then they are challenged at that moment whether to accept the idea that they're not worthy or to reject it because they know it's just can't be true. I mean, it's not, the inherent value of a person is there regardless of how they behave.
Yes.
And then once you have that level of clarity, it becomes easier to discern whether you're being gaslighted or something like that by another person.
Yes, this is why it is so important to understand the fundamentals, the very idea that you are worthy on the fact of your existence, deserving on the fact of your existence, because creation doesn't make mistakes. Therefore, if you exist, you are a valued part of existence. You are a worthy part of existence. Otherwise, you wouldn't exist if you weren't needed by existence to exist in order for existence to be all that it is. So when you have a clear understanding of the fundamentals of the basics of your worth, just by the fact that you exist, then everything else can be easier to discern because you start from a basis of indestructibility, of certainty, of confidence, of knowingness, and then all the rest is secondary.
And when individuals receive negative reflections from their immediate family or the people that are close to them, it seems to them it carries more power in some way because apparently that person's opinion of your value is more important. I mean, is there something you could say about that idea of just making a difference between the people who are close to you if they say things to you that upset you, or if it's a total stranger, how we react to that
All right.
in a balanced way?
Yes, but first and foremost, let us provide another level of clarity to the language that you're using, because we understand that the word reflection can be confusing, and this is why we're attempting to clarify the idea. Perhaps it would be better for people to understand, again, if they're willing to really look at themselves first, to understand that there is a difference between reflection and projection. So the idea is to learn the difference, to discern the difference between what is being reflected to you that you need to know about yourself and what is being projected to you from another that is more reflective of their issue rather than yours. So let's add the idea of projection to the concept of reflection, and that usage of those two words may make it easier to discern which is which. But the idea in family lines is because you have an innate feeling or an innate connection to them out of love, because family represents the idea of connections of love and support, that you add that connection, you add that idea of love and support, and it makes you take what they're saying more differently than you would with a stranger where you assume no love is coming from them. So it is the actual connection of love that you have that makes you more susceptible to the idea of receiving whatever projections they may be projecting onto you that represent their issues, because you're willing to look at yourself more readily and assume more readily that they may be right about you, even if they're not, because of the connection you feel of love to them, because of the family connection.
And when it comes from a family member, then it kind of gives you an opportunity for different levels of processing. One is, are you having an emotionally reactive response to any diminishment that you've received from a family member?
Yes.
And on another level, maintaining that state of neutrality, which is a higher vibrational state, in order to ensure that the way that you respond to the person that is projecting in that way is a way that will be helpful to them or give them the opportunity to change without having it activated by strong emotions or revenge or getting back at them because they've hurt you, that kind of thing.
Yes. But the idea is that, to put it euphemistically, a pause is your friend. Silence is your friend as a response, because it gives you the time to consider why they may be saying what they're saying, instead of simply having an automatic reaction that has tapped into your sense of self-worth or lack thereof. So if you find that you're reacting, it would always be wise to pause and say nothing and give yourself an opportunity to mull over why they have said what they have said. And in the silence, you may find it easier to discern whether or not what they have said is something you do need to take to heart to improve yourselves, or at least a part of it is, or whether it is purely their issue. So the idea is to learn to pause when you feel yourself reacting to something. Don't immediately respond. Take a moment of silence and ask yourself, why is this person saying this to me? Why am I reacting the way I am reacting? Is there something I need to look at within myself because I'm reacting negatively to this? Because I'm reacting out of fear or worry or self-doubt? And then give yourself the opportunity to really learn to hone your discernment in the silence that you give yourself, to afford yourself the time to determine exactly what is going on, instead of immediately reacting, what you humans call a knee-jerk reaction.
And in terms of the balanced response to it, when you finally do respond, can you clarify a little bit more about the kinds of attitudes you would have towards the individual when you finally do re-engage in some way?
Well, again, it would be one of more compassion and curiosity for why they said what they said, and asking them, why are you feeling what you're feeling? What has brought this up in you? Can you give me an understanding more clearly of why you are saying what you are saying and where that's coming from? Because I want to be of assistance here. I want to learn who it is you are and why you're feeling what you're feeling, why you're saying what you're saying, because I love you and I wish to be of assistance in clarifying the communication between us. Now, whether or not you actually say all of that, that's the attitude, that's the energy, that's the state of being of compassion and curiosity that expresses itself as a desire to assist, to get to the bottom of why something has been said and what the real issue is. Because very often when people say things, it is a surface reaction, and that there is a deeper issue that really needs to be clarified and revealed and unveiled.
And the idea that if you discern that the energy that's being projected towards you is negative, how do we respond to understanding that while incorporating what you just said?
I just told you how.
So you recognize that it's negative.
Of course, because you have the reaction to it, or if you are neutral, you simply recognize it is vibrationally not compatible with the truth that you understand yourself to be. So you either have the negative reaction, the negative response, or you have the neutral recognition. And in that, you still maintain the silence for a moment, maybe even for a few heartbeats. Have the curiosity and compassion to say, all right, I hear what you're saying. I recognize that you have this feeling, but if you can, please explain to me where this feeling comes from, what you think is happening here, what it is you believe that has happened that is allowing you to react this way, to tell me what you have told me. So it is, again, whether it is actually said that way or not, the state of being that you need to come from in order to respond in a more positive way and a more constructive way, and to get at the bottom of, the root of, why someone may have said what they have said, why they have felt